Saskia, again for the invitation to this wonderful conference here. I hope I will manage with the time, otherwise you will stop me. I've a lot of slides to show and a lot of new data brought with me, and also some new and old thoughts. The Heuneburg is famous. Can you hear me? Okay. The Heuneburg is famous for the early Iron Age for Hallstatt D, of course. However, it is often forgotten that it is also one of the most important fortified central places of the late Bronze Age, Reinecke D period, and the Urnfield period in Baden-Württemberg. The reason for this diachronic importance of the whole area, not only the Heuneburg spot, is its geographical location at the upper Danube River. The distribution of elite grave, here an older map of the wagons of the Urnfield period from Chris Pear, reflects the importance of the upper Danube as an axe of transport and connectivity already in this early phase of the Metal Ages. The same is true for the distribution of Hallstatt C wagon graves, which also clearly show that there are different possibilities to get, let's say, amber, copper, or tin from the north to the Danube and further south, and the other way round. One important traffic route followed the Danube upwards to the area of the Heuneburg until the water under the boat ran out, and then that is not at the Black Forest here, at the source of the Danube, because you have the drain of the waters of the Danube here to the Lake Constance. So you cannot go much further upstream from the Heuneburg if you go by boat. Yeah, and from here, if you want to go further north, you have to pass the Swabian Alp. To get to the Neckar, that is the Swabian Alp here, here the Heuneburg. To get to the Neckar, it's about 80-90 kilometers, and then to the Rhine, and then to Oss and the North Sea. The distribution of Hallstatt sea swords, graves on the right, clearly indicates the social elite controlled these mountain passes. And this is a cold, barren, water-scarce and altogether unpleasant area with elevations more than 1,000 meters above sea level. So you will not live there if you don't have to. Among those graves, the one of Gummarding stands out with a sword whose hilt is decorated with gold plates, comparable to the one from Oss Saskia showed us yesterday. It is situated, the blue dot there, it is situated approximately 35 kilometers north of the Heuneburg. In 2016, only 12 kilometers northeast of the Heuneburg, here, the badly preserved remains of a wagon grave were discovered near Unling on the Danube River during road construction, a rescue excavation. It can be dated to Hallstatt C. That means it is from a time when the Hallstatt settlement on the Heuneburg did not yet exist. So we are before the Iron Age Heuneburg with this grave. We think that it belongs to an older center of power, which already existed during the Urnfield period on the Bussen. That is, this mountain here is very dominating mountain. It dominates the whole landscape between the Danube and the Federsee here. The Federsee was much bigger in the Bronze and Iron Age. It was drained in the 17th and 18th century. The grave of Unling is located at the mouth of the Kanzach into the Danube. This small river comes from the Federsee, a lake with famous Bronze Age sites, Most of you will know the Wasserburg Buchau or the Siedlung Forschner for the older period of the Bronze Age. The Federsee, and that is important for traffic geography, the Federsee lies on the European watershed and drains south via the Schussen River, which can be used by boat up from here, approximately. So it lies on the European watershed and drains south via the river Schussen to Lake Constance and thus to the Rhine. From here you can either go south to the Alpine Rhine, and then you come via Mala and St. Bernard, pass to Italy, or you can go west via the Swiss Midlands to the Rhone, and then you go to Massalia and to the Golfe du Lion, or you go down the Rhine to the north. The grave has become known through this bronze sculpture. It is one of the oldest representation of a horseman in all of Central Europe. It might have adorned the box or drawbar of a chariot or a yoke. In any case, some preserved pendants here in the picture point to a chariot fitting. The pendants correspond in size and form to those from the Mitterkirchen grave, of course much better preserved and in a larger number there. It should be mentioned only in passing that the burials in Unling, so not only this central grave, there are three barrows, that the burials in Unling continued into the late Hallstatt period, as shown by these objects from secondary graves. There's also a rich female grave with some gold earring in it. Nonetheless, the political and economic center of power within this region shifted to the Heuneburg, which is here, and the Bussen is up there. At the beginning of Hallstatt, so it shifted from the Bussen to the Heuneburg, which was already the Heuneburg in the Urnfield period and the Bronze Age a center. So the whole, we have to be aware of the whole region, not only all the time looking to the Heuneburg. This shift of power is clearly shown by the settlement finds, of course, of the Heuneburg itself, as well as by the distribution of the elite graves. Already at this point, we would like to draw your attention to a phenomenon that we also encounter at other Hallstatt period centers of power. While the older princely graves are located relatively far from the settlement centers, the younger graves move closer to the settlement core. Thus, the Hallstatt one period elite graves Rauerlehn here, or Hohmichele, we saw it yesterday already, or Bettelbühl, I will come to that back later, are located at a distance between 5 to 2 kilometers from the Heuneburg, which is here. In Hallstatt D2 and D3, on the other hand, the leading social elite buried their dead right outside the gate, in front of the main gate of the Faubourg, here in the Giesübel-Thalau necropolis. An example of the older princely graves is the Hohmichele, which may have been initially created in the foundation phase of the Heuneburg period in late 7th century BC, probably before the mud brick wall on the Acropolis of the Heuneburg. The central burial, a wagon grave, has been robbed already during the Hallstatt period. However, among other things, the precious textile grave goods, including fabrics interwoven with gold wires, Laurent mentioned them yesterday, and maybe I don't know if you will not mention them, but we discussed that yesterday. Parts of these textiles, or the same textiles, were also found at Grafenbühl, 100 kilometers further north. So I will come to that back. So It is sure that it was a very rich grave, but it was solidly robbed. Unrobbed and well preserved, but it's only it's not really the highest social elite we see here in these secondary burial grave 6. I think it's the stratum below those leading individuals. This is well preserved, a famous double burial of a woman and a man. So we can discuss who followed whom, or did one follow the other? Were they really both inside the chamber, or maybe one on the ceiling, and so on? So that is not really clear. I wouldn't stress that too much. A much better understanding of the role of women during the Hallstatt period has been gained by the investigations of these graves here, the so-called Battlebühl group. This group of 7 grave mounds is situated in an unusual position, not on the mountains, right and left of the Danube, but in the plain below the Heuneburg, on the opposite side of the river Danube, 2.3 kilometers south of the Heuneburg. When in 2005, a gold fibula was plowed out on Mount 4 of the necropolis, Siegfried Kurz uncovered a child's grave that was richly furnished. We thought it is D1, D2, that's the reason why it is not in the map of Leif Hansen, but it is D1, we will see that. The artifacts included 2 gold-plated navicella fibula, you saw them here, and a pair of gold pendants decorated with filigree. The age of the child at the time of death was determined to be 2 to 4 years, maybe a girl, because these navicella fibula normally go with women. Our excavations in 2010 revealed that the child's grave was in fact a secondary burial here, in this position, situated directly next to the shaft of a larger central grave, which is also Hallstatt D1, and it is a shaft grave. It's also quite new. So it's a very modern architecture and also very unusual finds also for our region. The central grave chamber was almost square in plan, measuring 4.6 to 3.8 meters. The floor was constructed from 9 oak and 2 silver fir planks. The skeleton of the main burial was laid out on its back here with the feet to the north by the west chamber wall. The deceased was firmly identified as female. Her age at the time of death can be estimated to 30 to 40 years. Her head was dislocated, maybe by natural taphonomical processes, but it's not sure if not someone tried to rob this chamber. We'll see. We found it on the opposite side of the chamber here at the eastern wall. I cannot go into detail and show only some major finds from the grave. This woman wore 2 large navicella type fibula identically decorated with the same instruments than the brooches of the child. So it looks like if they were made by the same goldsmith. You see the large fibula of the woman here and the small fibula of the child here, and they are the same impressions of the same instruments in these gold sheets. In addition, 5 sanguisuga fibulae made of bronze and amber, you see 3 of them here, and 4 bronze navicella fibulae were preserved at her chest. In the area of the upper torso, 5 gold spheres, we saw similar things from Bohemia. 5 gold spheres decorated with filigree were also found which together with 26 ribbed gold tubular beads and numerous amber beads of various sizes were part of an elaborate necklace. We found these gold remains here a couple of years ago on the Heuneburg in a pit house of the mud brick period. So we can date it stratigraphically and compare it to the mud brick wall. This twisted wire here corresponds in material, technique, and size perfectly to the wires of the gold spheres from grave 4. You can see them here. Obviously, the gold jewelry of the woman and the child was made individually for them at the Heuneburg, and it was not imported from Italy or Iberia or somewhere in the south. The very high quality amber jewelry from the grave indicates relations to the north and a participation of the Heuneburg elite in the amber trade. Her forearms of this lady, you can see the well-preserved right hand here. It's a little bit like a book in a book, a corpse, because it's very moist. There's very wet in that grave. That is the reason why the woods and the timbers are preserved. Her forearms were adorned with a total of 7 jet bracelets. This jet is this material here you can see here is a special kind of jet called blackstone. This raw material exists only in southern England in Dorset and was probably imported to Heuneburg in the course of the continental tin trade. So we have to search your elite maybe in Dorset in Kimberley Bay. Someone had this connectivity to the continent, that is for sure. Near her navel, turned wooden objects of imported boxwood were found. Their purpose is still puzzling. It's also imported because box doesn't grow at the Heuneburg. We are at 600 meters above sea level. It must have come from southern France, Slovenia, Italy, some warmer region. To the right of the feet in secondary position, we found a single ear or temple ring, richly decorated with small gold bowls, like the one from La Butte we saw yesterday, and the pendant very similar to the pendants from the child's grave. This is 30 centimeter long, this band, so it's a large earring or temple ring. We found only one. It should be 2, and maybe this is indicates that someone took something out of this grave for what reason or ever, or that only one was deposited, the other possibility, but normally they were worn in pairs. During excavation of the burial chamber, yeah, that's right, the remains of a second skeleton were found here in the southeast corner. This individual was an adult, more probably female than male, very bad preserved bones, and only 1.56 meter tall. In stark contrast to the main burial, this person had only a very simple jet of jewelry, some spirals from bronze, that's all, and one bronze arm ring. As you can guess from this illustration, this skeleton was stratigraphically somewhat higher, and we assume that this woman was not buried inside the chamber, but on the ceiling here. And then it pushed down when the chamber broke and the soil went down, but this not for sure. Near the feet of the second skeleton, a nearly 40 centimeter long bronze sheet was found. You see it here in situ. Computer tomography, you see these pictures here, showed the remains of an iron bit here, with cheek pieces. So this object can be interpreted as a forehead horse armor or chamfron, a little bit like the Thor's pony cap in Britain, but it's younger. To date, this find is unique in the Hallstatt culture. Please note the ornamental decoration with compass pattern here. You can see it here, Falera-like compass pattern, which overcomes the rigid angular geometric art of the Hallstatt style and anticipates, to my regard, elements of Latin art more than 100 years before the early style emerged. We are in the year 583, as you will see in one of the next slides. Other finds probably connected to the horse gear are two pairs of teeth from the lower jaws of male wild boars, capital boars, so hunting prey. They have tubular bronze sheaths, you can see them here, with tulip-shaped pendants, which form a kind of rattle, so just like jingle bell when you are riding. To date, these objects are also unique in the Hallstatt culture. However, in late Celtic context, I see it here, but there are also finds from Roman castles, for example. Comparable finds in connection with mounted Celtic auxiliary units exist, and there are also something maybe similar in this direction in connection with the representation of Epona in the Gallo-Roman period, especially of our region. Into a religious or supernatural sphere could also point these findings from the grave. Obviously, they are objects that were believed to have a magical, perhaps even healing function. Among them, an ammonite fossil sea urchin, you can see it here, it was worked over. Rock crystal here from the Alpine region, probably. Probably a Neolithic blade fragment. It reminds a little bit at Rheinheim, where similar objects were found in Saarland. Yeah. And some stones, we don't know what they mean. The dendrochronological results revealed that the trees, both oak, that are the dark ones here, the dark planks, and silver fir, that are the lighter ones, used to construct the chamber of the central grave, were felled in the second half of the year 583, or in the winter 583, 582. And that is really for sure. There were fresh timbers worked. So this lady was buried in the winter or autumn 553. That is really a fixed date. I can only very briefly discuss the neighboring burial mound 2, which we are currently still investigating. So we talked about Mount 4, and now we are short insight into Mount 2. The central burial chamber is 5 to 3 meters in size and very much disturbed by one or more ancient robberings. Sadly, the construction timbers of the grave chamber are likewise somewhat worse preserved than in Barrow 4, yet still exceptionally good for a Hallstatt period grave. Up to now, we have just the terminus postquem for the construction of the burial chamber of 623 BC, but it's only core oak wood up to now, but we're confident that we can narrow down the date more precisely. The central grave under Mount 2 is probably also the burial of a woman. This is indicated at least by the similarity in the jewelry. Here on the left, a sanguisuga brooch made of amber and tubular. Of amber, there are several of these fibula also in this grave, and tubular ribbed gold beads, more than 30. See some of them here. On the right, two massive bronze fittings, which probably belong to a Hallstatt wagon. They are very close parallels from Hohmichele grave 6. Chronologically and also sociologically and culturally, the two graves are obviously very close to each other. They are probably very similar graves of women with gold, amber, and bronze jewelry. They both had exotic sanguisuga brooches, which are up to date, unique to for southwestern Germany, but were fashionable in Slovenia and Italy in the decades around 600 BC. Mount 4 will be allowed to describe as a female equestrian grave, while Mount 2 can be described as a wagon grave. Let us conclude the Heuneburg by briefly discussing the more recent elite tombs at Giesübel-Thalau, which belong to the period after the mud brick architecture and were erected at the late 6th century BC. In comparison to the exotic grave goods from Bettelbühl, these Hallstatt D2, the three graves, seem almost conventional. The gold neck rings indicating the highest social status of men of this time, and also the two gold arm rings, one of them from a woman's grave, all come from barrow 1. The other three barrows did not contain any corresponding gold grave goods, which could indicate a certain supremacy of the group buried in Mount 1. The four barrows were so situated in the landscape that a line of sight between the main gate of the Heuneburg and the Alteburg near Langenenzling divided the necropolis in the middle. The Alteburg is an important ritual site, maybe the religious center of the whole Heuneburg region during the Urnfield, Hallstatt, or end of the Urnfield, Hallstatt, and also early Latène period. But that is another story, only 5 minutes. Leaving the Heuneburg, we turn briefly to the Hohenasperg and thus to the old question why the distribution of Hallstatt D period and Latène A period elite graves are almost mutually exclusive in many regions. This phenomenon is especially pronounced in southwestern Germany, with a southern distribution, the red dots of Hallstatt D elite graves, and a northern distribution here in Rheinland-Pfalz and Hessen, the green symbols. So, some 20 years ago, I thought and wrote that this indicates a northern shift, a shift towards the north of the centers of power in the 6th and 5th century BC. And maybe what Nico Reumers showed to us, that is an effect at the periphery, and that are the same movements and processes. This still seems to be, to me, the most plausible explanation. This northward shift of the elite graves, and with them the political and economic centers of power, can also be traced within Württemberg. Thus, the first princely grave at the Heuneburg were constructed around 610 or 20. About 100 kilometers further north, it started with Hochdorf 100 years or 90 years later. And at the Heuneburg, this custom ended around 480 BC. At the Hohenasperg, we can detect it into Latène E, so again, much longer. So there's a shift to the north in these customs. Okay, I promised you in the end, yesterday, I have much more to say, but I will stop then there. I promised you some new insight into these two graves. The central grave from Hochdorf on the left is dated around 530, 520 BC. The central grave of Asperg-Grafenbühl, which has been robbed, an attempt of a reconstruction on the right, is about 20 to 30 years younger. Hochdorf defines the beginning of Hallstatt D2, Grafenbühl an early phase of Hallstatt D3. The distance between the two giant mounds in the landscape is about 8 kilometers. Both graves were extremely richly furnished. Both contain luxury furniture, four-wheeled wagons, gold drinking horns, bronze vessels, and religious insignia, namely ceremonial equipment to perform sacrifices, to my regard. Both men were over 1.8 meters tall. In fact, these two are up to date the tallest individuals known, as far as I know, from the whole Western Hallstatt culture. The Hochdorfer died around the age of 50, the Grafenbühler around the age of 30. These two individuals were tall and perhaps even great men, or maybe noblemen, I don't know, but they were certainly not big men. Hope you got the joke. As early as 2005, Susanne Hummel used mitochondrial DNA to prove genetic relationships between the two individuals in maternal lineage. Within the framework of an ongoing project of the Landesamt für Denkmalpflege and the Max Planck Institute for the Science of Human History, we were able to determine through the examination of the nuclear or core DNA that these men were indeed second-degree maternal relatives. Based on the chronology and the life data, they can only be uncle, thus mother's brother and nephew, in the sense of sister-son. The results are still unpublished, and the paper is to be submitted for publication soon, which is why I cannot go into further detail here today. At this point, however, I would like to remind of the well-known account in Titus Livius, according to which King Ambigatus entrusted the sons of his sisters, Sigovesus and Bellovesus, with the leadership of the migrations in early Celtic time. So maybe the keywords kingship, avunculat, aristocracy are the right keywords to my regard, of the right direction. So I end here, leave Wix out of my paper, and thank you for your attention.